Well, I'm going to do a little public complaining here. I mean, this is something that happened to me in the last 48 hours. While I was doing the Skyhunters Ardu plane, this popped up telling me that 4.1.1, which if you look right up here was what I was using, is now 4.1.2. And what I'm complaining about, and this is just a gripe session of my own because I don't blame the hardware software people for this. I don't know who to blame for this. I've been seeing it for 50 years. When you click on release notes right here, you get sent here. So under the documentation for the main ArduPilot.org, and I bet this place is a monster for size and topics and all sorts of stuff that's in it, and how many years it's actually there. There's no 4.1.2 release notes here for Ardu Plane. There's no 4.1.1 release notes here for Ardu Plane. It goes back to 4.0, which was released June 14th of 2021. That's a major release. And you can see these go by Ardu Copter, Ardu Rover, Ardu Plane. This is some special update. Back here's another Rover update. Copter. Here's Ardu Tracker. Had last release was on November 19th, 2019. Well, I hope I tried to play with that one this past year when I was playing with an antenna tracker for the first time. Copter. Rover. Copter, Rover, Copter. Rover. Copter, Rover, Copter. Here's where we had a rollback. Rover, Copter, Rover, Copter. And that's all. There's only one set of release notes in here for plane, and it's 4.0 release. And when I come into a release, what I want to see in it is what they basically fixed. Now this is a major release, always designated by this. It's the fourth major release since the project began, if they're keeping their firmware correct. Any new digit here with a 00 after it, that's a major release. 3.0, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Any releases in between the majors will be an incrementing of multiple digits on this side, however how they want to do it. On a major release right here, you don't get a lot of information at the bottom about can you use the parameters from your old last build, last firmware update, 3.0 version. Can you use 3.0 parameter files on a 4.0? If you can't, and this doesn't mean Ardu people, but software and hardware developers in general, they'll tell you, will warn you. I think it was version 3.2.1 or something is where they did the RC mapping, and I think that was in 2018. Don't quote me on that. They told you right at the bottom of the firmware, there's been a major overhaul in this software. Do not, under any circumstances, use your existing parameter files. This will require those files be built from the ground up again because the firmware that's when they put in RC mapping. And boy, you can't use anything from prior to that day on the firmware sense. So I have seen in the bottom of this where they warn you about a change that is absolutely 1,000,000% sure would cause you problems. On a major, a 0.0 of any firmware, if it's firmware 543.0.0, the major releases, everybody knows, don't use it. If you can, they'll tell you down here, but that's the opposite of the warning you. That's a special circumstance now where you can use your perimeter files from the previous version. It's not going to be that way very often, but they will always tell you about the warning and exception if you can't use them. So that's the kind of information I'm looking for. And if I come over here where they sent me, if I click on any of these, they're going to take me into the particular docs for building. See, we just go into the top of plane and start with introduction, ArduPilot hardware, first time setup, first flight, right down the line. So don't want to click on anything up here. If I go back, where they sent me, I don't find any release information. Now, real quick, we're going to look at Copter 4.1.0. And what I was talking about and this was a incremental release, 4.1. It could have been 9 other sub-releases before 4.1.0 that the 10th one rolled this over to 0 and put another digit out here. I don't know. Anyway, you get enhancements and bug fixes for that particular release. And right here is the one I really want to see on this release, 4.1.2 or even 4.1.1 or don't even really have it for 4.1. Don't have it for 4.1.0 for plane. It only goes back to 4.0.0, I think, wasn't it? Anyway, there should be no need to retune the vehicle or save reload perimeters. Wow, cool. That means I can use my previous perimeters. I like to see that in black and white stated. Even if it's not true, I found out later, oops, it's not true. I at least like to hear it when I'm first checking out the new version. Or a warning not to use the previous perimeters file, because the required perimeter conversions are done automatically as part of the upgrade. Ooh. Is that in Mission Planner? What if you flash with iNav? I haven't proved yet that flashing with Mission Planner causes my flight controller problems. I've got a suspicion of that. It's just a postulate at this point. I haven't proved that one. If I do in the future, or read, or somebody tells me that, yeah, you're right, you can't flash with Mission Planner, it will cause glitches in your hardware, where if you flash it with iNav, you won't have those glitches. Then that means maybe this perimeter conversion of your existing perimeters is also done in Mission Planner, but might not be done in iNav. And then we're not even talking about plane in this case. Can't find release notes for for anything after this. And you see the frustration that causes me, and I can therefore see the frustration it causes others. But if you can dig and really dig, this took me about too much time. I'm not even going to say. And I will put this link in the text on this post. This is the release notes for 4.1.2, released on the 17th of October, which is like probably last night at midnight. This thing popped up on me. That might have been it. And it says here, this is a minor update for a few important fixes. So sometimes when these things get updated from 4.1 4.1.0 to 4.1, and then in no time 4.1.2 comes out. That's because there were some really screw ups in it. Uh, and you can read through here and find your important fixes. Apply takeoff throttle skew limit in takeoff mode and forward transition in quad planes. Yeah, I bet that could have caused a couple of crashes. I don't know how it's wrong. I haven't really, I've just kind of looked in it. Ooh, don't apply fixed wing pitch limit to tail setters when hovering. Well, please. Anyway, of these fixes, the only one that is not backwards compatible is the new RC option bit, which needs to be set if you have multiple RC receivers on your aircraft. So seeing I don't have multiple RC receivers on my aircraft, I know right now, I can use the perimeter file. I can go ahead and flash 4.1.2 and use my 4.1.1 perimeter file. That was kind of painful to find. I did dig it out. So you got the 17th, 4.1.2, 4.1.1 was the 8th. So that's 9 days. So maybe the fixes here weren't that capable of causing a crash. Very few situations. 4.1.1 was a minor bug release. And this is some controller, whatever this one is, didn't orient the IMU correctly. I'd hate to have this job. 28th of September for 4.1. So you see this one doesn't tell you that you can't use your previous parameters file. Doesn't tell you that you can. This one tells you that you can, basically. 4.1.0. These don't either. So assume that you can at your own risk. I love it when they tell me straight up. So I love this for finding this for 4.1.2. Straight up. Backwards. All of them are backwards compatible except for this one RC option. So that was just my public kind of like, oh man, this stuff is hard to dig out sometime. That's because over in this type of thing in Mission Planner, they're just picking up the version number and putting it here and here. The rest of this has been a canned piece of code for years and years and years. Takes you to this address. This address hasn't been changed. If this address was changed to this GitHub address, RDoPlane release notes text, it wouldn't be a problem. But it isn't as pretty. And the other thing is that the developers of hardware and software, their documentation frequently lags. It is someplace. It has to be someplace. The developers will document down to the craziest degree. They just have trouble passing it on. But they'll keep the notes on the side of their workbench to document everything meticulously. And if it can go over just exactly like this, then you'll get that. But most salesmen and marketers and stuff don't want to market this kind of release notes. That's just really basic, but completely viable and stuff. So I understand what's going on, and documentation lags others in hardware and software developers. Get used to it. Or understand that you're going to have to dig to finally find it. It's not really their fault. They shouldn't be faulted. are doing the work. Uh, they know, but boy, is it frustrating. Yeah, I feel sorry for people getting into Ardu at this time. I think I'm going to have an easier time, although I'm not having a perfect time. I'm going to have an easier time with it learning iNav than people are going to Ardu. They're both equally frustrating. iNav's frustrating for me right now because I have no hours on it. I have no experience. I have no knowledge base built up. That'll build up. All right, just a little rant there, and a place where you can actually find release notes if you're working with Ardu.